And we are live. Welcome, folks, to episode 3464 of the Survival Podcast. Today, we're going to look at a ton of questions about Bitcoin and talk a little bit about the state of Bitcoin here in mid-March 2024. And it's kind of crazy to me that the first time I ever really talked about this, I knew of Bitcoin in 2012, but I didn't really talk about it. First time I really talked about this is 2013. So it's 11 years now. 11 years of listening to the same bullshit. And that's why lately, if you've noticed, I've been a little cantankerous of an old man or what have you, with all the BS and all of the FUD and everything else. And there'll be a little bit of that today, but I'll try to stay away from it. But I will just right here in this intro, if you're like, what about shitcoin XYZ in the live stream? I don't care. And we're not going to talk about it. But what about the scaling? What about whatever FUD bullshit you come up with? I will ignore you. And I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm saying that so that you already know that that's going to happen if you tuned in from the beginning anyway. And if somebody starts doing it and I don't notice them, you can let them know that if you're one of the folks that showed up early and heard that intro. And down the road, if you're watching this as a rerun or what have you, it won't matter because there is no live stream. But I do get tired of it. Anyway, today we're going to answer a ton of questions. So I'm not even going to give you kind of an outline like I usually do because I want to roll through this like a lightning round. No pun intended, though we will talk about lightning Bitcoin as somewhat today as well. But I want to go ahead right away and take care of our sponsors of the day. Well, sponsor of the day number one today is Start9 Sovereign Computing. That fits perfectly with the topic of Bitcoin today because Start9 is all about sovereignty. And since they have such a great little video on their site, I'll just play that for you instead of blathering on about them.
We all save our data, but where is it saved? In the cloud, which is actually this building in one of these computers with millions of others. This is called a honeypot, a single place full of data worth a hacker's time to steal. But instead, if you saved your data on your own computer at home, you wouldn't be worth the attack. Saving your own data is easy. Simply plug in a Start9 device and start saving all your own data today. So, will you stay in the honeypot or will you take control of your data? Start now. Start9.
And just a real quick ad before we move on to sponsor today number two today. Start9 is great for everything you just heard about. Protecting your data, being able to access it from anywhere, having it encrypted, coming down to one person's data versus millions of people's data, being less valuable to a hacker. But it also lets you do things like run your own Bitcoin Lightning node, run your own Bitcoin node, end-to-end encrypted messaging with only people that you let into your messaging service. And I just want to say, if you can use a smartphone and install apps and use apps, you can do this. This is not hard. Next up today, I thought I would do Joel Riles over at Fortress K9 and K9 Academy a solid today, and I'm wearing his shirt, and we are talking about his service next, which is K9 Academy. So it's kind of the day of the nines. We got Start9 and K9. K9 Academy is something that I helped shape for Joel. My wonderful little Belgian Malinois Belle, she comes from Fortress K9. And it was part of the deal that my wife made drunk on a barter blanket. It happens. And we got a beautiful dog. And he got like a 4-day stay at my house. We went out and had great drinks and all and great meals. And I worked that entire weekend with him on configuring how to set this website up the way that it is today. And what we realized during that is that the most difficult thing a dog trainer has to train isn't a specific breed of dog. Like, it's not like, Huskies are really hard because they're obstinate. No, you know who's obstinate? Humans. And so this was all set up to teach the human how to train the dog. Again, we teach the human, we train the dog to condition a response. The 3 C's of dog training, that all happened during that. So I completely endorse this because it was basically taking Joel's far more higher level expertise and then my marketing background and my canine background, putting together and creating this series of courses that will teach you everything that you need to know to train your dog well. And I recommend, if nothing else, you take at least the core obedience training, because no matter what you want that dog to do, point a pheasant for you in the field as a bird dog. defend your property or defend yourself or your home as a protection dog. If you want that dog to simply be a great dog that doesn't eat your chickens, no matter what it is, it always starts with core obedience. So make sure you consider at least taking that course. Links to our sponsors of the day are in the video notes below and will be on the audio notes for today's show. Real quick before we get started, if you look down in the video notes, if you're watching this video live or as Memorex, if you're old enough to get that reference, well, there's a link there that says for the audio version, click here. All the stuff that's not in the video notes will be over there on the audio side. So you can get everything that we talk about today, including links to some wallet providers and some other cool stuff like that. But there's yummy links down there in the video notes too. So please do not hesitate to use them. All right, with that, real quick reminder as we get going here, if you ask a question midstream, I will star it to answer it at the end. Odds are I'm going to answer it today because the list of questions that I have here is extensive. But I'm by myself and I am a one-eyed jack in real life. That's a true thing. I have 2200 vision in my left eye. That's why sometimes it kind of looks like it's going off into space somewhere because it is, because I can't see jack diddly crap out of it. So if you do not put the word question in all caps, then I shall not see it and I shall not star it and I shall not probably comment or answer it. Also, if you do super chat me, it will auto star. And that means that it will be there no matter what, even if you super chat me for like 99 cents with a super sticker or whatever. And Hogs has demonstrated the proper way to do this. And I am going to answer that right now. Now, his question for those on the audio, when is the best time to buy Bitcoin? Now. When was the best time to buy Bitcoin? Yesterday. When will be the next time? Tomorrow. And that will be all I'll say on that one because we've got this. And Mike, yes, I am talking. And I don't know why you can't hear me. Anyway, somebody help Mike at TN Permaculture with his technical problem because I can't, because he can't hear me. Anyway, so let's start digging into this. I'm going to say like the first half of this show from one person sent me this laundry list of questions. And I was like, oh, God. And then there was like, they're all great questions. They're all great questions. And I should just take this and make a show out of it. And then as I looked at it, I said, I got a lot of other stuff coming in from a lot of other places. I'll add to it. So thank you, sir, who sent me that. Can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, or I would give him credit. But a lot of times people don't want their name on air anyway. So his first question for me was, why was 21 million sats, the number, 21 million Bitcoin, the number Satoshi chose? Why not some other number? Why 21 million? Why not 20 million? I got to admit, being a little bit OCD myself, like I don't like numbers like 21. I like 20. I like 25. I like 30. Why 21? I cannot pretend to know the mind of whoever Satoshi Nakamoto really was. I can't. And I won't claim that I do. There is an interesting mathematical correlation, though. And I have a hard time believing that when something works out this perfectly, it's not part of why or why in of itself. So we have 21 million Bitcoin, but that means we have 21 quadrillion Satoshis, or in the smallest unit of Bitcoin that exists. When you do the price projection mathematics, guess what happens if you get Bitcoin at $1 million per Bitcoin? You reach something that I've referred to, and I claim credit for because I haven't heard anybody else say it yet. And maybe they have. I don't know. I don't listen to every Bitcoiner out there. Penny parity. Penny parity. And the way I got that is actually from Jeffrey Tucker. I had Jeffrey Tucker on the show, 12 years ago. And we talked about a lot of things, including Bitcoin. And he mentioned when he was like an early Bitcoiner in well before me. I wish I was as smart as Jeff Tucker when it comes to Bitcoin anyway. I mean, back when it first came out, he's like, when he was doing speaking engagements, and he was charging a speaker's fee. I want to be paid in Bitcoin or I'm not coming. Right? Man, if I had done that, I'd be talking to you from Jackistan right now. And he called it dollar parity. He mentioned that when Bitcoin hit $1, that was dollar parity. And one day I was actually rolling this around in my head. I figured out that at $1 million in Bitcoin, a Satoshi was worth a penny. And that seems way too perfect. And of course, the dollar being the dominant currency in the world and the global reserve currency, it would make sense that if he was going to play that game, he would do it with the dollar. That is my best guess, because 21 million Satoshis, or 21 million Bitcoin, 21 quadrillion sats, one sat, one penny. And that gives us a long way to go before we have to worry about something like a fractionalized Satoshi. Because if we did hit $1 million Bitcoin, what do you think a penny will buy you? Not much. And if we hit $10 million Bitcoin, then we would have a sat being a dime. And if we hit 100 million, then a sat would be $1. So I think we're good for a while with that system. So I just think that's why it happened. I could be wrong. I can't know who Satoshi was. And I've got a third question here when we get to that one that actually asked me to do this again. And I will just give you my guess. But the next question that came in was, can the ETFs play games with supply versus paper Bitcoin the way some say they do with gold? Let's start off with gold ETFs. The gold bugs and silver bugs of the world, who really think we shouldn't be talking about Bitcoin at all, Peter Schiff is God, and we should all worship the golden rock, will tell you, well, the reason that gold and silver have underperformed is that the ETFs manipulate things with inflating the supply, so there's more than there really is, and that makes the number go down. And that the gold ETFs don't have the gold, they only have paper gold. And while they do, I don't trust government at all before I say this, but I do trust government regulators to try to nail people because it's what they get paid to do. They try to justify their existence. It's why the guy from the city council, or not the city council, like the city inspector office, he'll be driving down the road and he goes past somebody's fence and he notices it looks like it just might be a little bit too much leaning, and he'll get his protractor out and go, that's 1 degree, and he'll write up a citation and put it on the guy's door. Like he could have just went on about his way. Nobody complained about it, but he cited the guy for his fence leaning too much. Why? Because it says, dear boss, who will decide whether I get promoted or not, and how far I'll go in this organization, I did something today. So I think if regulators can slam somebody, they tend to try to do it, especially in the financial space, though there's a lot of stuff being bought off. I just don't think that the problem, even in gold and silver, is anywhere to the level that's claimed. And I know that will upset some people, and I don't care. You can go talk to Peter Schiff about it because gold's not my thing. I don't hate gold. I don't hate silver. I hold both. But I know what the future is, and it is Bitcoin because it's digitized, and we can move it, and we can build things on top of it, and we can move it around the world without it going anywhere. And for all the talk of it being expensive, compare moving $1 billion worth of gold from the United States to Germany, or Germany to Japan, with moving $1 billion worth of Bitcoin in those same scenarios. And it's incredibly cheap and secure, and far more secure. So I just don't think that problem's that big as it claims to be anyway. But can you do it with Bitcoin? No. Why? 21 million Bitcoin. We know exactly how many Bitcoin there are. If the ETF guys started playing games with that, we would very quickly be able to go, you guys say there's 40 million Bitcoin. That can't be the case. You can't cheat because it's a public ledger. So all of you Monero fans and all, it's not a problem. It's a completely auditable blockchain. So much so that we already know who has what. Even the ETF companies like BlackRock that didn't come out and publicly disclose their Bitcoin addresses, we already know they are. I didn't plan on showing this today. I'm going to pull this up on the screen. I will add a note to the audio side for you. Many of you have seen this before. Let me pull it up. But this tool right here lets us take a look at the Bitcoin ETFs. And the main thing that people look at this for, including myself, is what is the flow? What is the flow into Bitcoin? And you can see right here, this is where we're at today. The ETFs combined, all of them, all 11, are holding 836,000 and change Bitcoin. 836,561 Bitcoin to be exact are being held by Bitcoin ETFs. And if we go back to ETF day where they were released, it was 619,000. So quite a bit over 200,000 Bitcoin have flowed, net inflows into Bitcoin. But there is other things available here, including things like, and I'm not sure exactly where it is, but if you dig around on this, and I'm just not seeing it right now. You can actually find the addresses, and the addresses are here somewhere, recent flows. Anyway, you just have to trust me. It is here. This is breaking it down. So I don't remember where I saw it, but they actually have the addresses. Yeah, right there is one place that you'll find them. And identified addresses right here. That's what I was looking for. And if you go into this view, you can actually see that we know all the addresses and who has them. And we know that. And if you look, you think, oh, that's not that many. There's 3,000 different addresses listed. This was not hard to figure out who was holding what. And you can see that you can sort by shareholders. You can sort by ticker. You can track the inflows, all of it. We already know. So we already have the ability. Very, very quickly, we developed the ability to ferret out who's holding what. And this is not anything that should surprise anybody. We know who the what addresses are being used for custodial addresses by Coinbase. When you start tracking flows that this company brought in this much and how many addresses add up to exactly that every day, they're able to suit that out. So I told you this before it happened, right? I told you this before it happened, that you were not going to have to worry about cheating because you, for the first time ever, had something that was completely publicly auditable by anybody anywhere in the world. So there is no way that the Bitcoin ETFs can all of a sudden say, we're holding 20 million Bitcoin and that's how many, we have 100% of it. It can't be done. It can't be pulled off. And you're setting yourself up for some real problems with regulators and lawsuits if you pull something like that. Again, I don't trust government, but the hurdles necessary to do a public offering are such that it's not the place, if you're going to cheat. It really isn't. So there you go. And Somo is saying it's identified addresses. And yeah, they may have some we don't know about, but what they don't have is ones they can claim that are not theirs. That's what matters. If we look at the total number of identified addresses and it adds up to less than what they say they have, that necessarily isn't bad because what they have makes sense, right? And if they were ever questioned, that would be the thing that they would have to reveal. What are your addresses? So I just, that's not something I'm worried about. And the only people that are people that don't want to believe that Bitcoin is what it is. That's the only people that are doing that. Or the complete uber maxis that think if you don't pay all your bills in Bitcoin, you're not a real Bitcoiner. I don't have a time to give a fuck blatantly about what people like that think. I don't have time for it. I've just shown you that we can audit this. It is not difficult to do. And the other thing about addresses that most people don't realize is they're clustered. And it's also the case that almost all the Bitcoin ETFs are using a third-party custodian who is also then put at risk if they were to aid and abet fraud. This is not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to make your quarter point on billions of dollars every day, hand over fist, for as long as people buy Bitcoin. This is why BlackRock et al. Played the game, because it is an easy grift. Okay, you got boomers that don't know how to buy it directly. You got people with institutional money. You set up a fund. You don't need diddly fuck all as a fund manager. You can literally automate the whole thing. X amount of Bitcoin comes in, you buy, and you custody that Bitcoin for your client. And when they sell, you sell and you discharge. It is a money machine. There is no reason to fuck it up. BlackRock is scum, but they're scum that love to make money. And when you have a money machine, you don't fuck around. Because if you fuck around, you find out in a bad way. Yeah. All right, moving on. This is an interesting question and one I've never heard quite put this way before, but it's really two questions. And the first question I can say kind of sort of, and the second one I can say I don't know that works. Is Satoshi a modern version of John Galt? That is one question. Who gave us a solution to the debt crisis? But the way I read the question was the world's debt crisis, not your debt crisis, not the individual who buys Bitcoin, but eventually if you get global adoption, somehow that will dissolve the existing debt, right? J-Reg, I got you, but you're lucky. Guys, Question in all caps. You're lucky I saw that without it being in all caps. So I do have you starred, and I'm not even going to read it. We'll see if it works out. So I want to start with, is Satoshi a modern version of John Galt? In a way, yes. And the way is disappearing. So a lot of people that talk about Galt's Gulch and who is John Galt, I don't think they ever read the book and really understand what Galt's Gulch was. So Galt's Gulch wasn't, we all go over here and live our own life off in Neverland with other productive people and forget about society. It was the most productive and very wealthy people that ran all the industry that were tired of being blamed for society's problems when they were producing the steel, when they were producing the trains, when they were producing all the things that society, and employing all these people, said, you know what, fuck it, we're out of here. And they all left for a time until their need was understood by society, at which point they would come back. That was the concept. Satoshi didn't really do anything like that. He created a thing, and where he was Galt-ish, if that's a word, is that he went away and disappeared. Will he ever return? I don't know. He would have to return for it to be a Galt's Gulch, cycle. However, would it be a solution to our debt crisis? I don't know that it would. See, because you have people that are smart right now that are buying, and if you're not buying Bitcoin, financially, you're not smart. Now, if you're 5 days from the grave, whatever. I understand that mindset. I got what I need. I'm done. But if you have a future, or if you care about the future of your heirs, and you're not buying Bitcoin right now, you're not financially smart. Okay? There has never been something that still has this much opportunity to be ahead of the mainstream adoption in the life of any living human being. But most people and most countries are not buying any. So if Bitcoin obtains global adoption and you have countries like the United States that are $34 trillion in debt, well, how much Bitcoin are they going to need to pay that off? So I don't know that it fixes the debt problem for countries. Early adopters may become, and when I say early adopters now, I mean countries like El Salvador may become some of the leading nations in the world. And the beauty of this, and this is something people don't understand about Bitcoin, because we still think as individuals rather than as nations with Bitcoin. If I have Bitcoin, yes, you can come to my house and put a gun in my mouth and make me give you a seed phrase, and you may or may not get all my Bitcoin. We'll talk about that more later. Or you can beat me with a wrench, the $5 wrench rule, or whatever. But if you're a nation attacking another nation to get their Bitcoin, military force isn't really very useful anymore. So a little nation like El Salvador could be easily invaded by any of its stronger neighbors, but you're not getting their Bitcoin. It's infinitely defensible. So these smaller nations that are smart and adopt early, both with their national treasury and their public use. So El Salvador not only is putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet of the nation, it's encouraging its citizens to do so. That may be a solution to the global crisis, but only for those smart enough to partake in the situation. Daniel, you better put the word question. You better make it a question, not a paragraph. I will not know what you're saying because I cannot do this and multitask. I'm sorry. Don't give me a block of text this big, bro. Anyway, next up, the next question was interesting. Will other crypto ETFs be approved, and specifically ETH? Okay, so I have accepted, in spite of the fact that over the years I played with shitcoins, including ETH, that there's only one in the end. It doesn't mean there could never be another ETF, but there are certain regulatory requirements here. And the ETH maxis and all of the people into all of the various shitcoins simply look at this now with no understanding of what 8 years of work were necessary and the assurances that were necessary to get a Bitcoin ETF approved. Okay. And how that happened. But since you did it for Bitcoin, you have to do it for ETH or my shitcoin of choice. You have to do it for, I don't know, diddly do coin or whatever. And the answer is no, they don't. They don't have to do anything, first of all. But what set Bitcoin apart from a regulatory stance in the first place? The first thing is that no individual benefited from the efforts of others because Satoshi galted. Satoshi didn't become Satoshi Marketing Inc. set up a foundation, take a shitload of the Bitcoin for himself. Now, Satoshi mined a bunch of Bitcoin, but anybody that was part of that process that went on in the Bitcoin talk forums in the beginning, it was public. You may not have known about it, but if you did, you had every right to mine as much Bitcoin as you want, and he went away. So there's no Satoshi Foundation or anything like that that profits because of your efforts. It was an immaculate conception. It was an idea, it was done, and nobody controls it. So if we look at almost every other shitcoin, we're already done. We're already into the realm of an unregulated security, and unregulated security is not getting through the FTC and not getting an ETF approved. Doesn't mean other countries won't do it. In fact, there are ETFs in countries like Europe for shitcoins. But until you get it done in the United States, or at least, maybe China, like it doesn't really matter. It did not have the impact that people thought it would when those ETFs were approved. It took the United States. When we look at ETH, what does ETH do? ETH makes shitcoins. It is the mother asshole from which all shitcoins spring. It really is. Like the easiest thing you can do to roll a shitcoin is to use the Ethereum blockchain. And the Ethereum Foundation just took fuckloads of ETH right from the beginning. There are people who directly benefit from the effort of others with Ethereum. Okay. And ETH doesn't really do anything except make more shitcoins. So I don't see it happening. Okay. That doesn't mean it won't. It means I don't see it happening. I don't understand how you don't open up the floodgates if you do something like that. Now, I'm not saying that there may not be another crypto that could make the claim we had an immaculate conception, all the things. Everyone I ever thought did it, though, when I dug into it. There was always some kind of founder's reward or some sort of pre-mine or something. Or you have individuals that have overriding control of things like network nodes and stuff like that. Bitcoin doesn't work this way. Anybody anywhere can run a node. Anyone anywhere can run a miner. It's not like a proof of stake network where you have like stakeholders. There is no way to manipulate the Bitcoin network directly. So you have to have all of those things, right? You have to have all of those things to get something like this into that place. And now that Bitcoin's there, the FTC would also have the defense of, well, why would we do another one? Now, I know the other side would say, well, you can't do one and not the other, but they're going to go, yeah, we can. Gary Gensler, during his lectures, often stated if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And when you look at all the rest of crypto, pretty much if you do a deep dive analysis of it, it looks like an unregistered security. The only one that I can see that has the strongest case, I used to think it was Litecoin until I looked into that, and no, it doesn't. And it certainly ain't Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, which were contentious forks. The first Cash started a war, and the second Vision was done by a fraud, now proven fraud, Craig Wright, who claimed to be Satoshi and clearly wasn't. I can't see this ever, those getting done. Monero would be the one that you could look at and say, this is the one with the actual shadowy coders and all. But I don't see the government ever allowing mainstream adoption into a commodity space of a coin that is designed to be private. That's why you have to take a publicly auditable blockchain like Bitcoin and build privacy technology on top of it. And we'll get to that later. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. All right. Next, I'm not saying it won't. I'm saying I don't see it. Will Bitcoin ever diverge from the rest of the crypto market, which seems to move in unison? Well, they already don't move in unison. It's a myth that they move in unison. And usually you have a Bitcoin top in a cycle, and then you have like behind it altcoin season, and that's when some of the altcoins boom and all. But the reality is if you go back, let's say 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and look up, let's say at this time, 7 years ago, what were the top 20 cryptocurrencies by market cap? and you remove stable coins. I don't consider stable coins to be in this world at all. They're not a speculative tool. They're how you hold dollars in crypto form. And I think that, honestly, if you want a case for something other than Bitcoin, it is a stable coin. It allows movement in and out of a marketplace and some other things. And I don't want to hold them, but I see the utility of them. It's the only thing I see utility left of. If you look at the top 20 cryptocurrencies by market cap 7 years ago, and you look at them today, you'll notice that there's almost none of the ones from 7 years ago in the list anymore. These things are mostly scams. And I can't get deep into it today, but let me tell you that there is an entire incestuous relationship from all these coins that act like they're competing with each other. There's a lot of back-end money that funds them. They become money printing machines. They wind them up. They market them really hard. They talk about some use case they have. They get them onto an exchange. They moon the people that are actually the ones that are putting out the unregistered security, which is truly something backed by nothing because they claim it does a thing that it's never done. They rake in, they take all their founder shit and they dump it. They rake in dollars or yen or whatever for it, and then they go make another one. So what looks like it moves in concert doesn't. What you have is new entries into the shitcoin space trailing Bitcoin. And here's the real difference. If tomorrow every shitcoin under the sun vanished, you might see Bitcoin's price drop for a second or two, a couple days, couple 3 weeks. But in the end, Bitcoin wouldn't give a fuck. It wouldn't care. It would just go on with its life forever. If Bitcoin died tomorrow, the entire crypto space would collapse. That's what I'm telling you. There can only be one. And that's where you need to be. So I don't even see it that way. Now, there are some with some longevity to them, like Litecoin, that really does kind of move like 96% in lockstep with Bitcoin. That can be useful for some things here and there for some trading tax purposes and all, especially if they ever were to close the wash rule, which they haven't, which we won't get into today. But I don't even see it as doing that right now. The space moves with Bitcoin, but the individual altcoins do not. Look at how many altcoins were the belle of the ball in the last cycle that are complete garbage shit today. That moon, that, you know, like if you would have bought them early, you could have become a billionaire, but you couldn't. That's what I always used to say. Like, this person's worth $1 billion in Dogecoin. No, they're not. Go try to sell $1 billion in Dogecoin and see what happens. Billions trade every day in Bitcoin. Go try to sell $1 billion in Dogecoin. Watch the price go through the floor the second that person tries to deleverage themselves. And that's what happens to these shitcoins. When the founder rewards that are held back, the pre-mine rewards, the stakeholder, whatever the fuck they call it, when they unwind that, and then you have, you know, I don't want to be really mean to somebody, but when you have people like Jeff Berwick, that is the king of pump and dump shit with all his newsletters and crap, and they wind something up, then they deleverage themselves. They're just wiping out the people that paid them for advice. And they tell you to stay in while they're selling their shit. You see the giant sell wall go through? That's Berwick's money being added up. He's just extracting from you guys. I'm sorry. It's the case. I used to like the guy, and the more I looked at it, the more I analyzed it happening in the past. It's a pump and dump scam. So you have the actual creators, and then you have the sideline, and they both pump and dump. That's what they are. It's just a money game. And you're betting that you know when to get in and get out better than they do, or at least as close to them that somebody else gets fucked. Sorry. It's the truth. I shouldn't apologize. Sorry, not sorry. All right. And then it was a really long question with all types of finagling and whatever. And the answer is, I don't know, but I can give you a general idea. The basis of the question when I read through all of it was, how do I make sure my Bitcoin's really, really secure, self-custody, all that shit? But when I die, my kids can get it, but my kids can't get it before I die because they decide they want the old man's money. And this person had done things like giving half of the seed phrases to kid and half to the other. Well, what if one of them ends up with a head injury? You need to have your seed phrases, all your information recorded in a secure location. Breaking that into 2 secure locations is not a bad idea. And then you have to have something that goes into motion when you die. I personally think that in the future, what we're going to have is a series of smart contracts that when, the public records say Jack Spear goes dead, these things happen to his Bitcoin automatically. That's what will happen. And you know, unless we're talking about huge amounts of money greater than about, I think it's like $20 million right now, there's no inheritance tax anyway. For all the talk of inheritance tax, the limit is really high and it's per heir, right? So if you're to the point where the inheritance tax is really going to hit you, you can literally just create more heirs, more places for it to go. If you get into that kind of money, you're setting up living trusts and everything anyway. And that these smart contracts will be able to, you know, either move the Bitcoin's control. It doesn't even have to actually move the Bitcoin to another address. What it could do is pass the information to the heir, because all you need is the information to access it and control it. So I think that right now, I think what you need to have is the advice of a lawyer who is informed about Bitcoin into your unique situation. I get questions all the time that have nothing to do with Bitcoin about business. What corporate structure do I use? Can I deduct this? Should I buy this property or should I lease it? Should I buy it and lease it to myself? Should I do a corporate to corporate structure with my business and have one company owning two, which do business intercompany? The answer is those are all fine ideas. They all work, and I don't fucking know. Tax attorney and CPA. So what it really comes down to is, do you have somebody you implicitly trust so much that you can tell them where the data is and not worry, or do you not? And if you don't, then you need to come up with something that fits your unique situation and what your wishes are. Because even the thing about Bitcoin, right, is even a lawyer could fuck you over and get away with it, because all they need is the data to access and move the Bitcoin, and then just say, I don't know. And then if they leave the country and go somewhere else, they can get your Bitcoin just like you can take it with you. So you have to think about this, but I can't tell you specifically what to do. And I won't tell you specifically what to do, because if I did, I would be giving you advice that no matter what I know, I'm not qualified to give, because I don't know enough about your individual situation to tailor it to you. And frankly, I don't care enough about you to find out. Now, that might sound really cold-hearted and shit, but you know, I have 60,000 whatever YouTube subscribers. The audio of my podcast gets way more downloads than the video ever will. I get more downloads the first hour that audio drops than a video will get views over a month. Right? There's too many of you. I can't pretend that I care enough to know you intimately enough to give you the kind of advice that I would get in legal fucking trouble for giving you, even if I did it. I'm not your customer support representative. I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your accountant. And I don't know. You have to tailor the solution to your situation. Some people would say, I trust my son so much. Here's the information, son, and I don't worry about it. Other people say, my son's an asshole. I still want him to have the money, but I don't want to have, you know, and that's why I think we will have technological solutions to this. Now, multi-sig is something I can't get deep into, but it's a 2 of 3. And this would be a really simple way to handle this as of right now. I give my son, for instance, if he's my sole heir, one seed. And I need 2 seeds to unlock the Bitcoin. I hold 2. I can unlock it anytime I want. I keep them in different locations. A third party keeps one on my behalf. Now, that third party is zero risk. One key does nothing. It's like a missile launch 1980s movie. Both guys have to turn the key at the same time. Okay. So unless my son has an insider at my third party that will give him the key and they'll both end up in jail if it's found out that they did it, then I don't have to worry about that. So that would be the easiest solution now. But does it work for you? I don't know, and I don't pretend that I know. Moving on. If you got to a point where you could pay off your mortgage by selling 25% of Bitcoin, including gains taxes, should you? That's the way I phrased the question. This person is, and again, I can't tell you what to do with your money, but I can tell you what I think about your idea. So what this guy said is, if I ever get to a point where I could sell 25% of my Bitcoin, keep 75% of it, and in selling that 25%, I would have enough money to pay my house plus pay the capital gains. So, throwing raw numbers out, say a $500,000 house and you're going to pay $150,000 in capital gains, depending on when you bought the Bitcoin, you would have to be able to sell $650,000. $150 goes to the government. 500 pays the house. I own the house free and clear, and I didn't have to pay taxes out of pocket. I paid it out of gains. Would I do that? Would I do that? Absolutely fucking not. Because a shitty mortgage right now is like 6.5%, 7%. And what you're saying is, I believe that Bitcoin will do worse than 6.5% to 7% annualized returns going forward. That's the economic decision that you've made. But there's always caveats, right? There's always, but what if? So if my income was such that I was struggling to live paying my mortgage, and I had a huge amount of Bitcoin, and I still get to keep 3/4 of it, I might decide, if I wait another 5 years, I could sell 5% and do the same thing. But I don't want to live that way. I can't tell you how to live. I know there are people that are screaming listening to this going, never sell. Shut up. You're not this person. You don't know their life. Don't pretend that you do. Don't pretend that you don't know this man might have lived in a fucking refrigerator box for half of his fucking life. Right? And might be terrified to ever have to go do that again. And if I pay for my house, I'll never have to worry about that. Maybe. Remember, though, when you do this, that house payment will not go away completely. You're going to have a property tax bill. And unless you're a moron, you're going to have insurance. So you need to figure out how much does this really save you to do the thing. And Builder of Castle says being mortgage free is so nice. And I used to think that way. I used to teach Dave Ramsey's method of debt elimination, though not investing. Dave Ramsey is a horrible, 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 horrible times 1,000, like to the 1,000th power advisor into how to invest your money. His investment advice is complete and total fucking garbage. And anybody that invests in real estate paying out of pocket for and then put tenants and pay for real estate, you're a complete fucking idiot. So but debt elimination, he's great. Pay off all the debt, except the house, and then pay off the house. I've dropped that. And the reason is I cannot see a world in which I cannot outperform a mortgage on a home with that free capital. I can't see that world. I would tell you that a person said to me, I'm thinking right now about taking a cash out equity loan on my home and buying Bitcoin with it. God, I wish you would have done that 3 years ago. I don't even care about the price of Bitcoin. I care about the price of the capital. Like doing that when you could get capital at 3%. Holy shit. But I would endorse that before I would paying off the mortgage with it. Unless, like I said, if it's going to drastically increase your quality of life, that's your choice, man. I can't say I've never sold Bitcoin to do it, but I've sold crypto to do some things that are similar but not the same. Again, a house is an appreciating asset. If there's anything you're going to have debt against, it's an appreciating asset. I'd rather have hard money and a cheap mortgage, right? But some people are in a state now, like there are people right now that say, like, dude, I'm worth like $2 million in Bitcoin. I could go buy a house for cash by selling some Bitcoin. I still have like $1.7 million or $1.6 million in Bitcoin. And otherwise, I don't get a house. I can understand why you would. All right. I'm not going to judge you for it. I just wouldn't do it. All right. And that's all I can tell you in the end is what would I do? I do think the person that pays off a $500,000 house with Bitcoin is going to look back at it the way I look at the Browning A5 shotgun that I have. In 2013 or 14, I bought a Browning A5 shotgun for $600 worth of Bitcoin, which was one Bitcoin. Bitcoin's at like 66 grand a day. I have a $66,000 shotgun. I love the gun. It will go to my grandson someday. It's a beautiful gun. It was worth $1,500 when I bought it. There was no reason for me not to just turn. The guy would take less money because I gave him Bitcoin, and I taught him how to use it. What I should have done is immediately replaced it. I should have gave him the Bitcoin because I would have given him 600 cash, but I didn't. Now again, you go back to 2013, we thought differently. That's how long I've matured through this. That's why I'm immune to so much of the FUD and the bullshit, because I've been through all. If it can happen, it already has. I've been through Mt. Gox collapsing, right? You guys went through FTX. FTX was a freaking cakewalk compared to Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox was the only fucking exchange for a long time. I was through Silk Road. I was through all of this already. So that's why I don't really care about where it's going. But you have to decide what you're going to do. Then this next question, I talk about Bitcoin being seventh generational thinking. And it was, again, I had to drill this question down. It was kind of long and detailed. But is Bitcoin something that will preserve liberty for future generations? Only you can determine that. Your great-grandchildren are not going to be able to do what you can right now. I promise you. They're not going to be able to make money by investing in Bitcoin no matter what happens, right? They're not. They're going to be able to save money with it, and they might earn some sort of, basic deflationary return, 4-5% per annum. And think of how much better our life would be in a world where if I saved cash, it increased in value by 4 to 5% a year instead of declining by what the government says is 3%, the CPI says is 3%. Reasonable real inflation estimates are more like 8%, but in the real cost of capital, it's between 10 and 20% per annum. How much better your life would be? How much less risk you would have to take? But in the end, they're going to have to work for their bread and save the surplus. If they're going to have generational wealth without building it themselves, which they would do with or without you, right at that point, they would just adapt to the new economy, then you have to make the investments that will carry through into that generation that at least gives your future heirs a starting point. And I look at it the way of, I can only worry so far into the future. I have grandchildren right now. Maybe someday I'll know some great-grandchildren. That's about as far as I can think as far as direct assistance. There's a point where I die, I hand off the baton, it's up to them. And they can squander it like most heirs do, or they can pass it on. When I say seventh generation, I mean the world in which Bitcoin becomes a global standard and people realize what it can do for humanity. We move back to a world of true hard money. We limit government's ability to conduct warfare, to conduct all types of terrorism on humanity. Government can completely exist in the most benign forms ever known, which is still terrible, but at least it does some functional things in a Bitcoin standard world. The governments we have of today that try to do cradle-to-grave entitlements and run every aspect of your life cannot exist in a world of hard money. Gold has always been known as the governor of governments. War was inherently limited in the past because governments could not fight a war unending. Even World War II. The United States was inches from losing to the Japanese economically. Militarily, it was never even in question. I personally believe, it's never been really discussed, but I personally believe it was part of the decision to go ahead and drop the 2 atomic bombs because we were this close. There's no doubt that militarily it was unnecessary, but strategically it may have been necessary. And what I mean is, how did the government fund World War II? Please buy war bonds. Like, if you go to like some antique stores and shit today, you can still buy posters from the World War II era begging U.S. citizens invest in the war. Buy bonds. Why? Because the government couldn't just print more money. Now, hey, we need another Abrams tank. Print or go burr. So when I say seventh generation, I'm talking about that type of macro change. If it's really going to be wealth for your heirs, there will always be poor among us. Even Jesus said the poor will always be with you. Right? I mean, you can't get much more macro than one of the world's great religions telling you there will always be poor among you, because there will always be those who will have less than others, because no matter how much government tries to render everybody equal, we're not. And sometimes bad things happen, and sometimes bad things happen because you do dumb things, and there needs to be consequences in life. Now, I do see a raising of standard of what poor means being possible. That what we see as poor 100 years from now, we may look at and go, gee, 100 years ago, that was pretty good. And society has generally moved in that direction. And if you doubt me, you're like, oh, no, Jack. Oh. A king in 1750 could not imagine the luxury of living in the home of somebody living in the projects today. Now, many other things that person in the projects today would never have, the king did. But he didn't have a thermostat. He didn't have a remote control television with 180 channels on it. He didn't have a phone that he could look up everything in society on. He didn't have a podcast to listen to. Okay, so we generally have moved toward the bottom rising as the top rises. I'm not talking about the 1%. I'm talking about the functional people in society that we generally look at and call wealthy or affluent, not the uber rich. That's a different thing. And that exists primarily because of, I don't want to get into today, the Cantillon effect and how close you can position yourself to the money printers. And there's something about the Cantillon effect I do want to hit real quick here before we move on. People think, for instance, that Elon Musk hasn't benefited from that because he built things in the private sector, but he did it with a lot of public money and a lot of money that was available through the incestuous relationship that the banks have. That's not putting him down. It's the system. You give people a system, they work the system you give them, and some of them are really good at it. But if you remove that ability and say value requires value or you don't get money, then a lot of the things today that are done to manipulate things into the uber wealthy, the top, and they say the 1% are shit. It's the top 1/4% that are really, I mean, that's where the real money is. It's hard for us to even get our heads around this kind of money. But it's all because they can rob money from the lower tier. It's because you can literally purchase money cheap and resell it. Imagine being in that business and understand how many people are in that business, whether it has the facade of a product or it's just straight money. I can buy money for one price and sell it for a higher price in a system that will allow as much money as demand pull creates. That's where we are today. And it's a terrible system. It's the most enslaving system ever invented. Why do you think it was invented? Because it works. It doesn't work. Yes, it works. It's working right now. You're paying your bills with it. So don't give me that bullshit. Moving on. Where do you use Lightning and what's the best wallet to use? Let's start off with this. I use Lightning primarily for little tiny things. Like somebody posted a meme on Nostr and it made me laugh that day, so I throw them 100 sats, right? Or I listen to a podcast by a fellow podcaster and I really like it, so I boost them for 5,000 sats, which is a couple bucks. I do not go, this idea that Bitcoin needs to pay for coffee and scones is absolutely asinine. Read the white paper. It's supposed to be a peer-to-peer cash. Shut up. The same person that says that turns around and says, never sell. Buying something with Bitcoin is the same as selling your Bitcoin for cash. You're exchanging one thing for another. But no, the thing you're buying, a coffee and a scone have enough value for me to part with my Bitcoin. Go get fucked. I've never had a scone and I love me some coffee. I don't eat scones, but if I did, a coffee and bacon. I've never had bacon and coffee that were so damn good. I'm like, I'm going to dip into my Bitcoin stash. So overall, I'm not really worried about this. But we'll build whatever technology people want. Lightning works. It works extremely well. Any of the fun about Lightning I won't address today because you're the people that talk shit about Lightning today. Well, you have to have your own node. And you're talking about Lightning in 2018 and it's 2024. It's 6 years. Go get fucked. I'm going to say that a lot today because if you can't tell, if you do something for 11 years and you're hearing the same bullshit you heard 11 years ago, you get tired of it. And you get tired of explaining it. I've explained it enough. If you want a deeper explanation of the things that I say go get fucked about, there are thousands of people just clawing to become a Bitcoin influencer, which I have no interest in. If you notice, Bitcoin is just one thing I talk about, right? I'm not trying to be the king of Bitcoin. I'm not trying to, be the next, what's his name, that did the whole Sailor series. The name just went away. Robert Breedlove, right? I'm not trying to be him. I'm not trying to be any of these people. I'm not trying to be, I can't even think of them because they're not that important to me, honestly, right? I care more about the thing than the people that talk about the thing. I don't need that. But we do need to be able to move Bitcoin in smaller amounts. As far as Lightning, Strike is built on Lightning. I love it because it lets me convert dollars to Bitcoin on the fly. And I think it's the best way to spend Bitcoin when somebody wants it. And what I mean by that is I can throw some dollars, some space credits in my Strike wallet. I can leave them. They're the perfect stable coin. They're already $1. I don't need a synthetic dollar. And Bill wants to sell me something, and Bill wants Bitcoin for it. And I don't want to pay capital gains on my Bitcoin. I received Bitcoin. It goes into the forever pile. Go get fucked. You can't have it. What will you do with it? I don't know. If I get old enough and crotchety enough and like I have enough money, maybe I'll spend some of it then. But as far as the stuff I've put into cold storage, go get fucked. You can't have it. I'm not selling it to you. I'm not selling it to BlackRock. I'm not selling it to Michael Saylor. It's mine. Go get fucked. Okay? But Bill wants Bitcoin. I don't give a shit what the price of Bitcoin is at this point. Bill wants Bitcoin. I take the $50, the $20, the $5, the 13 cents, whatever it is Bill wants, it's sitting in my Strike wallet. I go send this shit to his Lightning address. That US dollars go through a little tunnel and they turn into Bitcoin in Lightning form and they go to his Lightning wallet. I spent dollars, he gets Bitcoin in Lightning form. I don't care what he does with it. It's not my problem. I don't care when I buy something. Think about what you're doing when I buy something. This little pot, right? This is for starting seeds, and it has a value. It also has a life cycle. It will probably last about 3 years. When I look at the price of this cost me about a nickel. What I'm saying is this little thing will do a certain amount of value for me. In this case, start plants. Each plant that I start with this is worth about $2 to $6, depending on what plant it is and where you bought it from. Say just $2. We'll go low end. Each plant I start with this is worth $2. About a penny's worth of dirt goes into it, right? I have a nickel into it. It costs me 6 cents. Every time I start a plant in it, let's even say it was $1 value, right? I get a 94-cent profit the first time, and then every other time it's $1. I can do 2 plants a year in this for 3 years. That gives me about $6 in return for the nickel. Knowing that, I say, here's the nickel. I'll take the pot. You don't buy one of them, so I get 100 of them for $5, right? That's how that works. And I don't ever think back, Jack, you spent a nickel on that thing. Where is it now? I don't care. If it did what I paid for it to do, I'm done. Because I'm not going to go back and look at the dollar and say, gee, if I had saved that nickel, today that nickel would be worth $500. It's not going to happen. That nickel is now worth 2 cents, and I got $6 worth of plants that made me $100 worth of food that I've eaten and crapped out, and I've recycled the crap into fertility to grow more food. Yeah, that's pretty detailed, maybe more than you wanted at the end, but that's how we make every purchasing decision that we make. Does this thing do something for me that I could not do without it, or I'm willing to take my time and energy now symbolically, energetically in this currency and trade it for the thing? When you do that with Strike, nothing changes because you don't give a shit. That effectively, let's say you sold me a thing, right? Portable microphone that I take on the road with me. It's a mic like the one I'm using. It's just smaller. It travels better. These are about $200. If you bought this from me for $200, do you care that I bought Bitcoin with it or that I went out and had a really nice night and some really good old fashions with some really expensive bourbon? You don't care what I did with your money, right? That's how you look at money that you're going to spend. You don't care what the other party does with it. You care what you get for it. So when we look at it that way, we're not gonna have a point where people are trying anytime soon in mass to live on Bitcoin. I know there's people that do it because they have a YouTube channel about how they live on Bitcoin or whatever, and all fiat money is cuck bucks or whatever. Yeah, that's fine. I'll take your cuck bucks, and if I want Bitcoin, I'll buy them. Right now, the accounting alone is a nightmare. Oh, I live below, I live off grid and I don't care and I'm not going to pay them any taxes. And okay, you take that risk. I have multiple businesses in this society. There are certain rules that I agree to play by because they benefit me to do so. And so I don't want to have to figure out, well, exactly where did these sats come from? And when I spent them, how much money do I also have to give the gut? No, I'm not doing that. Again, I take the Bitcoin, I put it into a different bucket, long-term wealth holding bucket. And can you have it? No. You have to give me something that I think will be more valuable to me 5 years from now than this money. So So if you want me to buy a house for Bitcoin, you better sell me a house that I'm not going to do jack fuck all to, right? That I'm not going to have to do anything to. The refrigerator is going to last 50 years. And that's the world we'll go to as we transition, but it ain't going to happen anytime soon. So here's my stack. Can you have my sats? No. You want sats? I'll use a technology like that. Or within circular economies like Nostr, I'll spend Bitcoin Lightning. As for wallets, Strike to pay people in Lightning or in on-chain Bitcoin that want to accept it. But you don't want to give yours up. That's what that's for. For circular economies, I would say that the best Lightning wallet, and unfortunately right now, and I'll check right now to see if they've answered me, GetAllBee is probably your best option, but they had so much success that you have to have an invite code to use it right now. And they have not answered me yet. Now they're like 12-hour time difference between myself and those guys, and we'll see if they give me some more codes. But you can email me and ask. If they haven't given me codes, I'll throw you in a wait list. And I've been giving out Allbee codes to people who ask. I think I've given out like 100 of them since I said I would do that, and they may have gotten tired of giving them to me. I don't know, right? But what I love about Allbee is it's browser based, so it's just an extension. So you don't deal with shit like Wallet of Satoshi is a beautiful Lightning wallet, but they didn't want to deal with the U.S. government. So if you're a U.S. citizen with it on your phone now, it won't work. There's ways around that, but I think browser-based apps are the future. Browser-based apps are the future, and devices that are independent of things like the Apple Store, the Google Play Store, and all, that's the future. And that's where things will be in the future, right? One of the people here says today would love a code. Email me, jack@thesurvivalpodcast.com. TSPC in the subject line, no matter why you email me. In this case, TSPC, Allbee code. What the TSPC does is when I clean out my spam box, I make sure I didn't miss something by sticking that in there as a search query. So if you don't do that and you go in the spam box, there's a 90% chance. There is a 90% chance that you will end up not being found ever, and you will get deleted in one of my weekly purges. Hunter says there are a few people in our network that have Allbee codes. I don't know who they are. If you want to tell me how to get in touch with them, then I shall highlight your comment and let people see it on the screen, Hunter. Wild Blue says, how do you spell Allbee? And he spelled Allbee, A-L-B-Y. Guess what? You just spelled it. That's how you spell it, A-L-B-Y. GetAllbee.com. And it's not Allbee with an I. That is like the store, Aldi and Aldi. It is A-L-B-Y, and it's at getallbee.com. And if you go to the Bitcoin breakout and click on the Bitcoin Tools tab, you'll find that and many other things that I recommend, including hardware wallets and all the stuff that I recommend. And I want to say something about that. I'm not saying the stuff I recommend is the best. It's stuff I've used and I trust. That's all. And it's stuff that the companies that provide it, for what it is anyway, have good customer service. Do I think that Exodus has the best software wallet for Bitcoin if you're not going to go to a hard wallet? No. But you know what Exodus has? People that actually answer questions. And I'm not, like I said earlier, not your customer service representative. I don't want to be, and I don't have time to be. So I recommend tools that have enough support that you should be able to figure things out. Okay? That's all that I can do. So the email subject is Allbee TSP. TSPC is best practiced, all 4 letters, and I don't really care what order you put things in. It won't matter. As long as it has TSPC and something to indicate what it is, I will put it in a place for follow-up where you will probably get an answer. I won't guarantee it. If you can get a code from somebody else, please do so. And hopefully Allbee gets over their growth pains soon enough to just open that shit back up. Moving on, understanding custodial wallets in Lightning versus software wallets for on-chain. What do they mean by? So when you get into Lightning, a lot of the FUD people, and this is something that is worthy of explaining, because there are people that are not familiar with Lightning because it is like layer 2 technology that have legitimate questions about this. So what people want to know is, what does it mean that if I'm using Allbee, I'm using a custodial wallet? And why are people like Jack so big on self-custody okay with that? Because I'm okay with you putting $50 in $5 bills, $10 $5 bills in your pocket and carrying it around and knowing that when you go to pull money out, some of it might fall on the ground and you'll lose it and some bum will pick it up and go buy booze with it because it's only $50. If you are carrying around, an app on your computer, your phone, whatever, with Lightning Bitcoin with like $5,000 in it, you are an idiot. You're an idiot. That's not what it's for. That's not what it's for. That should be self-custody. I'm okay with it for the same reason I tell you, and we'll talk about this more in a bit. People say, well, I bought $50 worth of Bitcoin on Coinbase, and it'll cost almost as much to get it off there. Okay, first of all, you're not right. It's not $50 to withdraw $50. It is a significant bite out of the $50. I don't recommend that you withdraw it and just leave it there. But use it as self-custody. You have $50, and you're probably the person refreshing the price every 5 seconds now, right? People put 10% of their income into a 401k for years. They get a quarterly statement and they barely read it. They go out and buy $100 worth of Bitcoin and they start refreshing price action every 5 minutes and asking why they're not rich yet. It's a weird thing, right? So don't get upset over small amounts of money. And the way to do this is you have to start thinking cash, checking, savings, retirement, safe deposit box. It's not a direct analogy. But again, if you are going to go somewhere, let's say you're going to go hang out for a weekend with some friends and you guys are going to go to some sort of convention or travel to a couple bars or whatever, you're probably going to take your wallet, and in there you're going to have something like a debit card and some credit cards. And you might pay for certain things with those. But you might also be like, it's a good idea to have some cash on you. So you might go tap an ATM and take $150 out. So now you've got your card that is linked to a line of credit. You've got your card that is linked to a checking account, your debit card, and you've got some cash in your pocket. And what you're probably not going to do is go into your online banking account and you've got $5,000 in savings and move it all into checking just in case you need to spend it because somebody could get your card, right? And the bank even has a way that safeguards you to a degree, unless you do something that they call fraud on yourself. Then what you're going to do is you're going to be like, I'm going to leave the savings here, the card that links to the savings account. If I have one, I'm not going to take it with me. And if I really need to, I can log it on an app and move some money over. I'm going to have some cash. And if you get a little bit too drunk and you drop $100 on the ground, you're not happy about it. But a week from then, you probably aren't even going to think about it again, except you might secure your money a little bit better in the future. And 6 months from then, you wouldn't even remember it unless somebody brought it up to you. That's Lightning. Lightning is cash in your pocket. Sure, you could lose it. And sure, you could lose your cash. But does that mean you'll never carry cash? No. You don't worry about it because the amount is small enough and the risk is low relative. And I will tell you, the odds that somebody like Blue Wallet or Breeze or Wallet of Satoshi or Albi is going to rug their entire user base and fuck up their entire business are not zero, but they're very low compared to the fact that your drunk ass will drop $150 on the floor and the waitress steals it. But you don't worry about that, but you worry about the $5 you have in a Lightning wallet for a scone or whatever the fuck you say you're going to buy. Don't worry about it. Don't sweat the fact, unless you want to do the work to run your own Lightning node and balance equity, don't sweat it. If you want to do it, do it. I did it because it was fun and I wanted to learn. But in general, when I use Lightning, I use custodial Lightning and I don't worry about it. And I think of it like cash in my pocket because that's what it is, right? I have talked about this a little bit lately, more on social media than on the show. And it's something called cashew. It sounds like the nut, right? And they even use the nut as a thing, cashew. But it really is cash you. And I want to bring that up for you guys right now, for the ones that are on the video screen. And people ask me, well, what is that? And you can learn more about it. It's at cashew.space, link in the audio notes as always. And it is a system of eCash built on Bitcoin. Remember all the shrieking from the Bitcoin Satoshi vision and Bitcoin Cash retards that are still fighting? Like the people that are still talking about Bitcoin Cash and Roger Ver and Bitcoin SV and Craig Wright are Japanese soldiers on a little island in the Pacific with their 6.5 rifle and they think they're still fighting a war in 1948. It's over. It won't be refought. You lost. It's done. But they're always big on, if you read the white paper, and I swear to God, most of these people they didn't read the white paper. They read somebody talking about the white paper, and they read one fucking sentence of the white paper. That's what they read. They read one sentence of the white paper, the title of it. And they have no idea about the complete writings of Satoshi. They have no idea that if you go back to the Bitcoin Talk forums, you can buy a book that compiles it all for you, that all of these things were discussed. And the original people and Satoshi that were part of this decided that society would develop technology to enable Bitcoin to do these other things. That any scaling problem, anything like that, could be solved with layered technology. If you read all of it instead of just the little piece of it, you would learn that. Well, Cashew aims to link to Lightning and do a cash-based system that's far more anonymous than Lightning, which is already very anonymous. It is for privacy. It is also brand new. I would say Cashew is where Lightning was in 2018, 2019. That's where it is right now. And so you should really put, like, instead of the $150 you'd take to the bar, like the $50 you would take to the swap meet is what this is for, to learn about it right now. But we are going to move into a world where there are plenty of apps like Nutshell, and you'll be able to take a portion of your cash, right, buy some Bitcoin with it in its own little world, move it or receive it in return for something, and have really a cash-like experience. eCash was an idea that is a big part of what spurred Bitcoin and the development thereof, because until Bitcoin, it never worked. And Satoshi was a very forward-looking person, whoever he, she, they were. And I think that they understood that if Bitcoin were ever to obtain global adoption, if we were ever to get to penny parity per sat, that it would require government to maybe not love it, but at least kind of accept it. Like, say, you know what, you can have your ETF, and then go, oh shit, now it's in the retirement accounts of firefighters and teachers and cops, so we have to leave it alone. Like, it needed that, and it needed to be auditable for that to happen. So all this shit talk from the Monero maxis and whatever about privacy and whatever, they're like, we will build things to do that. But they also accepted the fact that the vast majority of money that moves around is known. Like, when somebody buys a company, you know who bought the company. When somebody buys a car, there's fucking a title for the car. When somebody buys a house, there's a title for the fucking house. You know who bought it. And you know the money came from somewhere. It didn't get, farted out of a leprechaun's ass in a jelly bean field. So we're not worried about that. And if you wanted to have something perfect, you wanted a bearer instrument that could be verified anywhere in the world. And that's what they built. And these technologies like Cashew are saying, okay, now let's take this where you can break off a piece, because we know the majority of people are not going to sell. That we know this. But you can break off that piece that you want as spending money, and there's multiple choices of what you do with it. We have things like Liquid, Fediments, etc. All of these technologies being built where we'll be able to have corporate relationships, corporate to corporate billing, corporate to corporate lending. Like, if you're going to have money, it's going to see this idea that, like, the blockchain needs to do everything is absolutely asinine. Does the dollar network enable country to country transfers of dollars? Or is there a separate payments network that does that? And you either know the answers to that question or you should research it, because I'm not going to give it to you. But I'll tell you, it's not the dollar network. So you can process of elimination in a binary multiple choice should make it pretty easy to understand. And they'll say, but that's how they sanctioned Russia. But what if they couldn't? What if there was a way that Russia could take its money and transfer it directly to any nation, not just China that has a friendly relationship with it, but a tacit friendly relationship, right? Well, Bitcoin will have any number of permutations. In fact, the beauty of Bitcoin will always be that if you fuck around enough, you're going to find out. Because in the end, I still have the ability to transfer my Bitcoin to any entity that I want to. And in the end, there really isn't anything you can do about it. And so this will enable all these other technologies to be slowly over time accepted as there's not really anything you can do about it. The fact that the person can just leave your jurisdiction and have their money. You know, right now, if you want to leave Canada permanently, they want to take like 20 to 25% of your fucking wealth before you get out the door. I don't have any wealth. I have some numbers in my head. Go get fucked. That's Bitcoin. All right. So then there's the latest thing that's been popping up on social media lately, and it's all new Bitcoiners. It's all plebs. They don't know anything. They haven't been here. They're like class of 22, class of 23 people. BlackRock's going to buy all the Bitcoin. BlackRock can buy as much fucking Bitcoin as they want to, but right now they don't own very much. They own billions. No. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people are holding Bitcoin through BlackRock's ETF. BlackRock does not determine when that Bitcoin is bought, and they don't determine when that Bitcoin is sold. They don't determine the price of purchase, and they don't determine the price of sell. Bill has an IRA, and finally he can invest his money without any kind of complicated bullshit in Bitcoin. So Bill says, I'm going to buy IBIT or GBTC or whatever. And Bill buys it. And the ETF company goes, okay, now we have to buy Bitcoin. At what price? They don't give a fuck. This is what people don't understand. BlackRock doesn't give a fuck what the price of Bitcoin is. Except for, I'm sure they have their own holdings. And I'm sure they're going to buy with fiat and they're going to play all kinds of games. But it's still, there's only 21 billion Bitcoin. There will never be any more. BlackRock could buy half the Bitcoin. They can't make more of it. It doesn't work that way. People that talk like this, they don't know. See, people say you need to be doing like at least 100 hours. And a lot of people say it's really 1,000 hours of research to understand Bitcoin. People that are talking like this haven't done an hour of real research. They might have listened to hours of podcasts, but they haven't done real research. They don't really know what they're talking about, or they wouldn't say shit that is this stupid. There is an episode of Big Bang Theory, the nerd show, right? Where Sheldon says that he thinks that people should have a chip in their head, that if they say something stupid enough, their head just explodes. Like these people, their heads would just be blowing off until enough of them saw heads blow off. Like, I want to shut the fuck up because I don't want my head to explode, right? BlackRock was able to exert quite a bit of influence over companies for their ESG bullshit, but it's because when you buy an ETF or a fund that is a stock fund, it's not like you buy the Ford Motor Company ETF. There's no need to do that. Ford has a stock that's a publicly traded security that you can just buy. So you buy a mid-cap fund, or you buy a large-cap fund, or a growth and emerging markets fund. And a fund manager says, this is the charter of the fund. And these stocks, let's say it's a large-cap fund, right? Then there are certain stocks that meet that criteria, and the fund manager has discretion over the allocation of those companies. So BlackRock could say, we have billions and billions of dollars in this large cap stock fund, and you happen to be a large cap stock. And if you don't play ball with us, we'll find other large cap stocks to put in our fund that will. And they were able to use that to exert influence in the space. So who are you going to go do that with Bitcoin? We're not going to buy Bitcoin. Motherfucker. Understand this. You have a Bitcoin ETF. It has one thing in it that's publicly auditable, Bitcoin. If Bill gives you $50, you shall buy $50 worth of fucking Bitcoin. If Frank sells $1 million worth of shares, you will sell, or you will take your own cash and give it to Bill, and then you will move that Bitcoin over here as a reserve. Those are your fucking choices. You don't have any others. So this idea that if BlackRock gets a hold of, 1 million Bitcoin, they'll be able to change the network, shows a complete lack of understanding and a total level of ignorance that I can't even bother with. Again, there are people that will hold your hand if you don't understand that owning a lot of Bitcoin doesn't give you any say in the network. I can't do it anymore. I did it for 11 years. Again, I have to stop saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm not sorry. I've done it for 11 years. I can't do it anymore. I'm done. You need to go do your own research or listen to other people that hold hands with people who don't understand this yet. Bitcoin is controlled by mining and node running. It is not controlled by ownership. That is proof of stake versus proof of work. BlackRock doesn't own Bitcoin because Bill has shares in their ETF any more than they own Ford. But again, like I said, at least they had a leverage point in a mixed ETF or a mixed fund. Let's say they said we're going to do a nickel ETF, but we're not going to do it in raw nickel ore. We're going to do it in companies involved in the production, refining, and use of nickel so that we can make batteries, or cadmium or whatever. Well, there's a whole bunch of places that you can put into that fund, right? And you can tell, supplier A, go get fucked because you didn't do what supplier B did. And you can extort leverage. And so the same people that when I was saying that were telling me it couldn't be done now are telling me it can be done with Bitcoin. And they're saying, Jack, that's why I'm answering this. Because they're saying, well, you said that BlackRock could do this. Well, I said in the context of a mixed fund, not in the context of a single commodity fund. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can have a gold fund that's not really like GLD, which is we have an ounce per X amount of shares and we maintain a pairing. You can do a gold fund that's a bunch of different gold miners. And you can go around and tell a gold miner, if you don't do things a certain way, we will exclude you from our fund. You can get away with that. If I have to explain that one more time, you're not going to understand anyway, so let's move on. Next one. The guy says, what if you hit the jackpot, but you're only rich on paper? This is kind of the same question as the house question. So basically he says, I'm rich now. I listen to you, I'm rich now. But it's just paper rich. I can't do anything with it without selling it. Well, what do I do? You're asking me what to do with your wealth. Again, it's like when people ask me about their business, tax attorney and CPA. Only you can decide when you're willing to divest of an asset that has a year-over-year high return rate and virtually know that even if there's down periods in the middle and what have you, that over time, whatever you buy will lose value against holding your wealth. This is you're sitting on the first time. This is why you have this question. All of you that have it. For the first time in your life, you're not just sitting on an appreciating asset. You're holding a deflationary currency. You're holding a currency that grows in value no matter what against almost everything else in the world, because everything else in the world is denominated in fiat dollars. And you've never experienced it before. And I've always said that wealth can be a double-edged sword, and it can cut you as well as allow you to cut. And this is why people who win lotteries destroy their lives in 5 years or less on average. People that win a lottery will often end up in a position that their life would have been better 5 years later had they never won the lottery, because they don't understand the power of that wealth. And so now you're sitting here with wealth and you don't know what to do with it, like it's burning a hole in your pocket. If you really want something that you can't have any other way, and you want to spend your Bitcoin to buy a house, to buy a car, to buy I was going to say a bad word that I won't say. All right. But I literally almost said it because I don't want to ever come across like most freaking Bitcoin maxis that tell you what you should do with your wealth that they have no idea how you earned it. There could be a guy out there asking this question, and he listened to this conversation before I ever did, and he took it seriously before I ever did, and he could be sitting on $100 million worth of Bitcoin, and some arrogant fuck who hasn't done anywhere near the amount of work that this guy did will tell him, if you sell it, you're stupid. You're selling your Bitcoin to BlackRock. Don't sell your Bitcoin to Michael Saylor. Shut up. When you sell your Bitcoin, you sell it to whoever the fuck buys it that day on the exchange for whatever the exchange rate is. You don't know. This guy might have slept in a fucking box and picked up cans under overpasses to earn the money to buy the Bitcoin, and now he's worth $100 million. He's like, fuck it, I want a mansion. I'm going to spend $2 million worth of my money. Go ahead. But you're the one that has to live with the decision not to spend and the decision to spend. You're asking Jack Spirko to tell you what to do. Again, I don't know your situation. I don't know if you are the person that stumbled into this and did it really easily. I don't know if you're the person that sacrificed greatly. And I don't know the rest of your life story. I will tell you that if somebody came to me and said, you know what, Jack, one day I woke up and I was worth $5 million worth of Bitcoin. And I said, fuck it. And I took 20% of it. And I went out and I bought my dream property with it. And now I have, 150 acres, some quads I run around in, a paid for house, and my life is good. And I still have $4 million worth of Bitcoin. I'm not going to tell that person, you're stupid. You sold your Bitcoin to BlackRock. That person can do whatever the fuck they want to with their money. And I am talking to the larger Bitcoin community right now. You need to learn this. You need to learn this. Now, I understand many of you, you're actually talking to plebs that came in yesterday and they made 20% on their money and they're like, woohoo. They're like the guy at the roulette table that hit, put down a double zero and made 37-1 on his money. But he's still looking at like $2,500, right? Walking out of the casino, I totally understand, but that doesn't mean spend the money or put it back on the wheel or try a different, now go play craps. You'll make the real money. That's shit coining, right? Like you got lucky, right? But you don't have even that person. You have no right to come across with fucking arrogance, telling them they're wrong for spending your money. Now, I will say this in defense of those people. Most of them have been around a while, and they have the same feeling I do. I regret every Bitcoin I didn't buy, and I regret every Bitcoin that I ever sold for any reason ever. And they're just trying to convey that. But the way they go about it is so, this is why they call them toxic. It is so fucking arrogant. You don't know the person's walk in life. You don't know where they are. You could have a person literally living in a shithole and their entire life has changed. And if they're smart about the way they do it, they can make their life better and still have a good reserve. And that same person is out spending money every day that they could be buying Bitcoin with and aren't. That same person saying that, well, the next shot they'll show is they're sitting in a bar with a nice bourbon. They could have bought the whole fucking bottle for $50 and they just paid $12 for one pour of it. And they're telling this motherfucker he's wrong for spending his Bitcoin. Again, I'm going to say the phrase of this episode. Go get fucked. Okay? You don't know somebody's walk in life. People have to make this choice for themselves. I still think that most people that do it will see it as a mistake. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you every mistake you could make in life and tell you you're a dumb fuck if you do it. How do we learn? We learn through error and correcting our errors over time. That's the way science is supposed to work, and obviously doesn't, because science has become a freaking trademark scam. But anyway, moving on. I think I've lost my shit enough. What does it mean to consolidate UTXOs, and why would you do this? Okay. There's a long fucking explanation to this. And what I'm about to tell you is not 100% accurate, but it 100% works. Okay? And the person asking this question, that's what they want to know how to do. They want to know what works and why you would do it. And if you want to know more, I have a link in the audio notes of an article that explains it brilliantly, except it's written by somebody from the UK, so they use pounds instead of dollars. If you can't figure that out, you're not going to understand anyway. But it's not addresses, but you can think of it as addresses. And a lot of us bear some responsibility for where people are with this. But the solution I've already given you is just in a different context. So I said 1,000,000 times probably over the years, if you are selling shit for Bitcoin, every time that you decide to sell something for Bitcoin, you should generate a new address for privacy and security. Because if I have a Bitcoin address and I have $5 million worth of Bitcoin on it, and hanging laundry here is like, I want to buy MSB. That's a $100 transaction for 3 years. I do it. I don't ever say it on the air, but I just did. And now I have to explain it because I went and fucking said it. When somebody emails me or fills out the form and wants to buy MSB for Bitcoin, it's $50 a year. And I say you can pay $50 for 1 year or $100 for 3 years. So that's a thing. And they say, so Hanging Laundry says, yeah, I'll do 3 years for $100. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I'm going to make my money back. So yeah, sure. And I'll just buy some more Bitcoin, or I'll use Strike or whatever. So they send me $100 worth of Bitcoin. I give them Bitcoin address, jackspirko.com, right? I just make up some random fucking thing. Like that doesn't exist, but let's say that was a Bitcoin address. So they send it there. And then Hanging Laundry's like, I wonder how much fucking Bitcoin Jack has. So Hanging Laundry goes and checks out that address and it says $5 million. He's like, holy fuck. And all of a sudden, Hanging Laundry's coming in with like his SEAL buddies and they're beating me with a $5 wrench until I give them access to that, right? I don't want that. I also don't want my competitor to be able to know that one address and go look at all the transactions. And if I'm in a catalog business, be able to look at it and go, well, these 20 items based on pricing are his best-selling items. And there's a lot of reasons I don't want that, right? The problem has become fees. And if you now have, let's say, $5 here on one address, $10 on this address, $50 on this address, and another $100 on this address, and you want to spend as much money, you want to spend all that money, when they have to go off those addresses and get combined into a single transaction. And that makes the transaction fees higher than if you had all the money on one address. Okay. So all you really have to do to consolidate UTXOs is generate an address and send all the money you want on that UTXO to one address in one transaction. And at that point, they're combined on that one address. And then in the future, if you want to move or spend that money, it will cost you less. And what a lot of people do is they wait till the network fees drop to a very low rate and they consolidate. Okay. One way you can start doing this is the way you save money with exchanges. You buy until you have a couple $1,000 worth and then move that to a single address. Now, this will totally, if you're on a fiat exchange like Coinbase or Strike or anybody else, Swan, whatever, if somebody was analyzing that, they would know that all these purchases went to this one place. Bill, John, Jack, whoever, right? Humble Mechanic, who's here. Hey, Humble, woohoo, has all, that's probably his address. Or he spent it all, and whoever has it, it's one per party. So it does give that up, but what it does is it makes the Bitcoin more portable for less money in the future. Because right now, if you are trying to send $5 worth of Bitcoin, it's kind of a fool's errand. You're better off moving $100 on a Lightning and then spending the 5 and having the 95 in Lightning. Way, way better off. So that's all that is. So it is oversimplifying to equate UTXO with an address. But if you take all the Bitcoin you have at a low fee period and send it in one transaction to one of your new addresses, it will all be in one UTXO and that will happen. And again, if you want a more detailed explanation than that, you got to read. Because if I start explaining it, I'll probably confuse myself a little bit in the process, correct it, and bore everybody. There'll be like one person out of 100 that will be hanging on my words, 2 more that will be kind of like interested, and the other 97 will be like, fuck, I don't care. All right. And informed out of that 97 be like, why doesn't he just tell them to send that shit to one address? That's what I did. How do I self-custody and not lose so much to fees on withdrawal? I already answered that one. You wait to withdraw until you have a significant quantity, probably more than $500. And right now, I would say less than $2,500. About $2,500 is what I would be comfortable having on an exchange. And there's people sitting here go, that's as much as I have in Bitcoin. Yeah, you should probably be withdrawing at $500 to $1,000, right? And as your cold storage, or even at least just self-custody software wallet, as that grows, the ratio will tell you what to do. So the person that's sitting on $1 million worth of Bitcoin that has $5,000 on exchange and is like, I'm gonna do some more DCAing before I withdraw. They're not. What's the ratio, right? The person that has 5,000 in cold storage, right, and they have 1,000 on exchange, that's 1/6 of their total holdings, and that's how much is at risk. So again, this is another one of those things. Dark Horse has it. Depends on the person, your situation. I think he's trying to say it depends on your personal situation. That always is the case. What do you do if you have a lot of ETH right now? I don't know if the term that everybody would use for my amount of ETH is a lot, but I bought a bunch of it back when it was like under $1, and I still have some. And I have selectively exited ETH positions across time when alt season comes in ETH moons. I have done things like dump it, hold it, and buy Bitcoin later because I know the cyclical nature of Bitcoin, though I'm not sure we haven't broken that yet. I don't know. I don't know what the drop. I don't know if you'll ever see the prices we're looking at right now again after we get done with this cycle. I don't know how far we fall will be a function of how high we go. But with all this money that's coming in from institutions now and long-term holders, do we stabilize that some? I don't know. But I mean, I bought my car with Ethereum. Why? Because Dodge dropped their pants to their knees. That's why. Because I was able to buy a car for half of what it was worth if I paid cash for it. So I did. I still have that car. I could sell it for more than I paid for it right now. So I don't know. Again, you're back telling, what do I tell you to do with your wealth? The future of Ethereum is not long-term. But by long-term, I mean, decades. There's still some time for that to do whatever shitcoin shenanigans it's going to do. And I think that if you're thinking of converting it to Bitcoin, if that's your end goal, I would probably just do that. Because you're looking for ETH to outperform Bitcoin and then make the conversion. And you still have the tax consequences, right? If you're looking to buy something with it, let's say you did what I did, where you get a shitcoin minimalist with your most of your money in Bitcoin, and now you have a substantial stack here, and you're like, well, I could use that for a down payment on a home. Again, you're at a moving target. Like, you got two moving targets, but mortgages probably are not going to go back to 1978 and be 18% anytime soon. So you might want to hold back on that. All right. So it depends on what you want to do with it. And here's what I would say with anything you're going to sell, even if I don't approve of it personally. What would you do with it after you sold it? That's the most, like, there's people like, well, I should sell it. Well, what are you going to do with it? I've had my wife at times, after I'd made this, became a mature Bitcoiner. Well, we could sell some of that. And what would we do with it? And what would we do with it that we can't do without it? And, when you look at it that way, it's kind of a different thing. Like, how could I put it to work where I'm more comfortable with it now than it was before? And then I'm going to pay out the ass in taxes, right? And so that's why I try not to give generic answers, because you might live in a country that doesn't have capital gains tax on Bitcoin or doesn't have capital gains tax on Ethereum. And you might feel much more free spending it than someone that's going to take a hit on it in the short for 25 points on the gain. You might be sitting on it and it doubled since you bought it, and your capital gains is actually pretty low relative to the total. Or if you bought it for 98 cents, well, now you're going to pay almost 100% capital gains on the total sale. So that's the other thing people need to look at with capital gains on making trades. People will, I'm going to pay, X amount. And are you? What's your gain? You only pay tax on the gain. If you bought something for 50 and you sell it for 70, you pay the tax on the 20, not the whole 70. A lot of people that they talk like experts, and then you can tell they don't even know that. When you're listening to somebody and they tell you what your tax is going to be on a sale, and they talk about the sale as if there is no basis against the sale to realize a profit, stop listening to that person. They're full of shit. They're generating content and reading a script from fucking ChatGPT or some shit. Be careful. There's a lot of morons out there. Moving on. Would I put money in a 401k right now or take that money and buy Bitcoin? Good question. I almost never say that. And I have an answer. So I'm not. Usually when somebody says, well, that's a great question, what they're saying is, fuck, I didn't expect that question, and now I need time to think. I actually mean it. That is a great question. And it's also still back to personal issues. But if you are going to keep your money in the 401k, and this guy was at 4%, so it's not that much money, and you're going to put that into your retirement in your 401k, what you're saying, whether you realize it or not, I believe that this money in this investment vehicle with these options that my employer grants me the privilege of buying will outperform taking the money to myself and buying Bitcoin with it. Now, some people say, but there's tax advantages. Okay, well, now there isn't. Now there isn't. You can go open up an IRA, and you can do conventional or Roth, just like you can probably pick at your employer, conventional or Roth. I always say do Roth. I always say do Roth. And I always will say do Roth, and I don't care how many times somebody selling whole life or some bullshit like that tries to talk me out of it. I will tell you to go fuck yourself. There's the phrase again. And I will always say do Roth. And there's more to it than just the tax advantages alone. In a Roth IRA, I can take out any of the money that I put into it, as long as I fill the form out right, at any time with no penalties or taxes due, because I already paid tax on the money. The only thing that's locked into that account long term is the gains. I also can trade inside of it, and I can play the whole mega cycle gain. And once I see that all-time crested and it starts tumbling, I can dump and I can wait. And when it comes down, I can buy it back, and I don't pay any taxes. Beautiful. And with a Roth, when I take the money out after retirement age, if I decide to, I don't pay any taxes. What people will say is, if you put money into a conventional, though, you don't pay tax on it now. And I say, if I put it in a Roth, I don't pay tax on it ever. And in the end, people do what our friend asked about. They put 4% in. They don't fucking say, well, because I'm not going to pay tax on it if I do a conventional, I'm going to up it to 5. That's actually the one piece of good investing advice that I ever heard come out of Dave Ramsey's mouth. Don't even think about that, because it doesn't change how much the contribution is. And that small amount of money, that 1%, you just go ahead and piss it away anyway. So just don't do that. I agree with Dave on one investment piece of advice in his entire career. That would be it. So that's what you're saying, whether you realize it or not. Because now what you can do, that if you had asked me this question before, without doing something like going to choice and setting up something complicated, you can go to probably your bank, but you got to be careful with banks. Sometimes they have very limited options for your IRAs, but you can go to any brokerage service, set up an IRA, and start transferring. You can go to your HR Karen, fill out a form for direct deposit, and have like the bulk of your money go to your bank account, and that 4% can go straight into your brokerage account. It's just a second depository, and you can buy IBIT or GBTC or whatever now. So you can still have the effect. The only thing that you would think about here, okay, in this thing would be employer match. If you still have an employer doing something like a dollar for dollar match, I still think Bitcoin will outperform. But you're talking about 100% ROI on day one. And this is where I would really think about doing that. If I was going to leave my job in the next few years, I would harvest that 100% return, that 100% ROI, and roll it into an IRA upon leaving that job. And then you can buy all the Bitcoin you want. You're in a very advantageous position if you're short time. If you're going to be there for 20 years, I would tend toward moving the money into a position to buy Bitcoin with immediately. And I would go Roth no matter what. But again, that's me. You have to make that decision for yourself. Another one was, how do you exchange Bitcoin for currency in a foreign country? You need a brokerage account to exchange for fiat. And you just do. And it doesn't matter that it's a foreign currency. Because when you're in France and you have dollars and you have a Visa card, then you spend dollars and they get francs. It's not a thing. It's not worth worrying about. You have wealth. You don't have francs. Well, I guess you don't have francs and you get euros, right? I'm back 25 years now or something. If it doesn't matter where where you are, you would convert to fiat to spend in most instances, unless you were buying someone that accepted Bitcoin, and then you would tell the whole banking sector to go fuck itself, and you would do a Bitcoin to Bitcoin wallet transfer. And like the places that this is working best right now are places that have carve out. There's very few of them, but like El Salvador, you can go to El Salvador with Bitcoin and just spend Bitcoin. Like it's that simple, and that's where we will go long term. Final thought I wanted to give you today, because I know, and I haven't seen a lot of haters today. They seem to be thinning out as the prophecies continue to be fulfilled. But I also haven't paid attention to the flow very much of the chats. And I'm going to tell you, still though, the only person you hurt by not buying Bitcoin at this point in time is yourself. I don't care. Like right now, I put out a meme today. And it was the famous, the gangster photo, like they're laughing. and it said me and the boys from the class of 13 laughing at the plebs, crying about $66,000 Bitcoin right now, because there's literally people on X, on Primal, Nostr, other social media Bitcoin's crashing. What do I do? Bitcoin's crashing. Fucking hell, like it is up over 30 days and you think this is a crash. God fucking help these people if we have a typical cycle. You know, I don't care how high it goes, they're going to still slit their own necks and jump out of buildings, right? Like Bitcoin, let's say Bitcoin goes like 400,000 this cycle. It's not a prediction, but it is a possibility. Okay. And it goes to 400 and it drops back to 200. They'll say it crashed. If 200 becomes the new bottom, they'll say it crashed. I don't care when you buy it. If you're putting away money long term, if we're looking at a decade, I don't care when you buy it. If you need it next week, don't buy Bitcoin with it. Don't. That's not what it's for. That's not what it's for. If you can't treat it like the money in your retirement account, it's not for you. I used to say if you wouldn't take it to the casino and put it on the craps table, it's not for you. Right? I don't say that anymore. It's not going to zero. It's not going away. And it's going up forever for the sake of the lifetime of anybody alive today. But it doesn't mean there won't be volatility. But if you can handle volatility, if you can treat it with looking at a quarterly statement and just keep throwing money into it, even small amounts, guys, you can buy $5 at a time on like Robinhood and I think Zelle or Block. I don't know. I don't use any of that shit, right? I don't buy $5, but I hear from people all the time. You can buy $5 at a time. Like, buy $5 a fucking day if you want to. That's $35 a week. It's what, about $140 a month. It's actually a little bit more because there's 4.34 weeks in a month. Only accounting morons like me know that, right? You know that there's not 4 weeks in a month. There's 4.34 weeks in a month across the calendar, aggregated out across all 12 months. So it's a little bit more than $140 a month, but you could do it $5 a day. Well, I can't afford to withdraw. Don't withdraw it. Fuck's sake. Quit looking for problems. You know, every 3 months, withdraw to your self-custody. You will end up wealthy. I didn't say rich. I said wealthy, in that you will have a hell of a lot more than you would have had otherwise. I've never talked like that until the last couple of years because Bitcoin didn't mature enough to say that responsibly until the last few years. And now that we locked in that ETF, we have made it untouchable. We have made it a third rail. Once something is in people's retirement accounts, you cannot fuck with it. And everybody wants to talk about 1933 and FDR and the gold. Gold was not in people's fucking retirement accounts. Most people didn't know what a retirement account was. They had pensions that were made up of gold in the form of cash, and they didn't take it away. They changed what cash meant. That's not what this is. You can't do it now. It's going to zero. Who says? Peter Schiff? The motherfucker's been wrong. Every word that has come out of that man's mouth about Bitcoin has been wrong. He has like 1 million followers who are poorer for listening to his advice. If you did what I told you to do over the years, right now, it's all fucking white noise when people talk shit. You don't even care. You're laughing. I hear from people like that every day. I have one apology to make. And I did the best I could at the time. And that is that I told many of you at different times, here's a shit coin you should buy. I didn't call them that back then. I used to think people that called them shit coins were very arrogant. I'm a man that learns from his mistakes, and I publicly admit those mistakes. If I had never sold a Bitcoin, right now the background would look different. I would be in a different place. I would have enough that I would have spent some of it. I would be like, live today from Jackistan. That's where I would be if I had done that. I've still done very well with it. Done very well with it. But I would have done better if I just took it simple. One thing, buy it, hold it, never sell it. That's the best advice I can give you. That's the best advice I can give you. And I would tell you that I think that what I just did is probably very rare in the space of being a podcaster influencer would have overall. But I don't know if there's maybe a handful of people that ever done it in the Bitcoin space. A guy I pick on sometimes because he has some stupid ass views about politics, Peter McCormack, from what Bitcoin did. He did. I will give him total fucking credit for that. I shitcoined, we shitcoined, we all did, we all got wrecked, and then we learned. I heard him say that. I never heard him actually apologize, but I don't know that he had a podcast and told anybody to do it, so he has nobody to apologize to, right? I will give that man credit for that, 100%. I think his ideas on government and politics are stupid. Good Bitcoiner, though, and an honest man. It's getting very rare in the space to find honest people that will say, I fucked up. Well, ladies and gentlemen, not the first time I've ever said it, but I'll say it now. I fucked up. Every Bitcoin I ever sold or spent, I wish I didn't. And every one I could have bought and didn't, I wish I did. And every time I bought a shitcoin instead of Bitcoin or used Bitcoin to buy shitcoins, even the trades, because I made some fucking money with shitcoins. Overall, the track record would be better had I never touched it. I publicly did it. I showed it. I did it with Doge. I took $1,000, turned it into like $5,500 in 4 days, and then converted it to Bitcoin and moved it to cold storage. I did it in our Telegram group. I showed people how I did it. I posted screenshots to prove it. I still wish I didn't do that. And you might be like, Jack, why? That worked out. Because for all the ones that work out over time, you pick the winning horse, you stick with the winning horse, right? And Richard's saying R. I made a fuckload of money on R. And the day I told people, and I don't know if you listen to me or not, I know people don't listen to every word I say. The day it became clear that CoinEx was going to stop taking U.S. customers, I started converting every bit of it to fucking Bitcoin. Every bit of it. Every bit of it. I have like 14,000 R right now. And just don't know. You know, like it's such a small piece of the whole. Like if it ever moons again, I'll dump it through Trade Ogre or some shit and turn it into Bitcoin. And if it doesn't, I'm okay with that. But learn from my mistakes so you don't have to make them yourself. Buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, never sell. Unless you, like we talked about that enough today, unless you have something in your life that's worth trading your long-term wealth for. And that's what you should, that would be my final piece of advice before I answer some questions. Here I have like 6. If it comes down to, I'm going to liquidate Bitcoin to do something, am I willing to exchange my long-term wealth for this thing? Say the words to yourself. Think about it that way. And you'll find more often than not, the answer will be no. And if the answer is yes, that's your life, and nobody has a fucking right to tell you what to do with your money, nor do they have a right to tell you what to do with your Bitcoin, nor do they have a right to tell you to do with your life, nor do they tell you have a right to do with what your diet. I might recommend a diet, but in the end, you decide what you eat and you don't eat. You decide where you live and you don't live. I might tell you to get out of New York City. You want to live in New York City? Hey, Jack Sprinkle doesn't get to tell you where the fuck to live. All right. Nobody else does either. J Reg says, should I swap out of my Ledger Nano X to a better wallet? Not sure about the whole Ledger live function. If so, any recommendations? I like Trezor. I have a Trezor Model T, several. It's hard for me to recommend something that I don't own. And it's hard for me to recommend something other than what I own because obviously that's what I would do. I would get my money out of a Ledger wallet right now, though. I wouldn't get in a hurry. I might watch networks and, look for low fee period or whatever. But I do not trust Ledger after the bullshit that they pulled. I don't. So that's as simple as I don't trust them. It'll probably be fine. How much money is it, right? If it's $50, I don't give a shit what you do with it. If it's $500,000 on a Ledger, it's worth the fees to put it somewhere without Ledger's bullshit. I'm just saying. And I won't get into what they did. You can look it up if you want. Daniel says, need advice about personal situation, how to reach you, email, live stream. My question isn't directly relevant to Bitcoin, I think. Daniel, Jack at thesurvivalpodcast.com is the email address. TSPC in the subject line will mean that I read it. If you ask me a very personal question, very specific about your life with a whole bunch of fucking details, I'm going to tell you I don't do that. If you can ask me a question in one sentence, the question with a mark, and then give me details, it is highly probable that I'll give you some sort of an answer. But I get questions all the time that are kind of like, I need to know what to do with my life. Bro, I've got 3,400 episodes about what to do with their life. I can't do that for everybody. It's not possible, so I don't even try. I do try to answer every email I get. I will say that. including with sometimes it's just, I don't do that, man. You're going to need to go talk to somebody. But usually I try to give some form of advice. And I will tell you that does not come without sacrifice. To be the guy that at this point in my career still does that. Again, I don't know how many people out there do that. I don't know who there is in my space, been around as long as I have, that makes a full-time living doing this, that has the volume of inbound that I do. I'm not saying there isn't anybody, but it's hard. And I only say that so that you understand, if you get a response from me like I can't do that for you, it's not because I don't care. I actually do care, but I can't do it. It's not doable. Mike says, I've been stacking Bitcoin since 2019. How do we access the capital in the future? I've heard borrow against your Bitcoin. How does that work? Stacking sats is useless if you can't use it. Wealth is useless unless you spend it. That's what you just said, Mike. Wealth is useless unless it's spent. You know, again, I'm gonna say this again. At some point, when you have enough wealth, there are things that are more valuable to you than the wealth or the future wealth. And at that point, as a grown-ass man or woman, you choose to spend your wealth on those things. Borrowing against Bitcoin probably is the long play for people who have built enough wealth in it. It's a very low loan-to-value ratio against an appreciating asset. For as long as governments have taxed income and not taxed debt and cash flow from debt, people have done it with things like real estate and art. The system necessary for doing it at this point is not mature enough to make it a valid cash flow model, yet it will happen because you have the most pristine form of capital known to man in Bitcoin. It can be set up with smart contracts where the lender can never lose. Compare it to a house. I go out and I borrow $1 million to buy a piece of real estate. I give the bank $100,000 as a down payment, but they don't actually get it. It goes to the seller, along with $900,000 of money that the bank is now on the hook for. And the bank agrees to take payments from me over time, holding the property as collateral. And if I default, they have to seize the property, go through all that bullshit, and sell the property and hopefully get back more money than they put in. Or if I had $1 million worth of, if I had $10 million worth of Bitcoin, say I had $100 million worth of Bitcoin, and I borrow $1 million worth of Bitcoin, 1%, the bank has a smart contract issued, and it says if I miss payments, then they immediately get their money. As a bank, which one would you rather loan money against? Now, what I just described doesn't exist yet. But I want to push this back to, if you were a bank, which loan would you rather make? Would you rather loan money against real property that has all the problems of real property that I could not take care of and fuck up, right? Let tenants into it that like piss on the walls and shit, and you got to deal with that, or you just instantly get your money? Which one would you prefer to loan money against? So the fact that that already can be done means that eventually it shall be done. And there's people that have broken it down with spreadsheets and show, like, if you wanted $150,000 worth of cash flow in your retirement and you started out with a 2% loan, here's how much money you would need to start out with a basic historical track record, being conservative. You could borrow money for 100 years this way and never run out. I haven't gotten into it because it's pointless under the current systems. But I do believe that those types of financial instruments will exist. Just like I told you an ETF would exist. And the reason was, I'm like, so if you can have a spot ETF that makes you 1/4 to 1/2 point on somebody else's money and you can't lose, price go up, price go down, you can't lose, then do you want one? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So then all you need is a giant financial corporation to twist the arm of the FTC enough to get what it wants. And we have those, like BlackRock, like Fidelity, etc. And one of them will do it, which is why I knew it would happen. Because it had to, because it could, and because it made sense. Hunter said, there are a few in our network. Oh, you said that earlier, Hunter. I don't know who those people are. I don't know where to find them. If you want to, right now, on the live chat, go ahead and drop in. Like, is it on the how do you find these people? I'll put it up and let people know if it's there when I come back around. I got 2 more. Mike says, is there a way to access capital from stacked Bitcoin without selling it? That was a restatement of your original question. Good on you for putting it in twice to make sure it got in. How did you dump your ETH and what platform, says K-Bonk? I used Coinbase. And the reason I used Coinbase is there was no way to transfer the ETH to the other party. Dodge was like, no, we're not taking Ethereum. I'm like, will you take Bitcoin? Because there's ways I could have like done a swap that would have been better for me, and they wouldn't take Bitcoin. Right? They didn't orange wash. By the way, that's a term that I coined in 2014 or 15. I don't remember, where companies come out and they say we accept Bitcoin, but they don't give a fuck about Bitcoin. They just have instant back end transfers. I called it orange washing. I'm predicting that 2024 will be the year that somebody makes orange washing like a coined phrase, and I'll get no credit for it. But I'm right here saying it was me, and I haven't heard anybody else use it yet. I used Coinbase because I had it already linked to my bank account. So it was a very simple process. Sell X amount of ETH, convert to cash, transfer to bank account. There's plenty of exchanges that do that, but you need one that does that if you want to convert it to fiat. If you want to convert it to Bitcoin, almost every exchange on the planet will do it a direct swap ETH to Bitcoin. Just know, either way, you have tax implications. Either way, you have tax implications, which means there's some of you that might have bought Bitcoin at like an all-time high. It might make sense to actually sell it when it's down, capture the loss, buy into something else that's appreciating at that time. That's one of the real advantages of Bitcoin. People say never sell, never sell, never sell. I don't say that. When I say never sell, I mean never sell permanently. I mean never sell to buy some other bullshit with it. Because I have done this. I have so this is a tax lesson I really didn't plan on getting into today. The IRS says you can use UTXOs or you can use first in, first out as your tax basis. So for instance, a few years ago when Bitcoin was in about the same price range it was today, I was buying it and moving it to specific addresses. Okay. And then Bitcoin went from like $60,000 down to like $15,000. And it was somewhere in the 20s when we were heading up toward the end of a tax year. And I totally took that Bitcoin. I threw it on an exchange. I sold it for cash and I bought it back. And then I took the loss and I put the Bitcoin right back into cold storage. And people say, "Dad, they're going to get you." You can screen capture video this and attach it to your tax return. It's how the law's written. So that's just something to understand there too with that question. Let's see if there's any other comments. Hunter came back and explained how to reach those people. No, I would say the most likely way that you would find people in our network that would have things like Albi codes would be either our Discord server or our Telegram group. And both of those you can find at the survivalpodcast.com and click on Get Social. With that, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to help us out, I want to let you know about a couple of ways that you can do that have, well, nothing really to do with Bitcoin. One is, I'm a big believer that it's important for us to be more self-sufficient. Bitcoin is just one way that happens. We've had a little bit of trouble connecting because his life's been so hectic lately. But Guy Swan wants me to come on and explain to Bitcoiners why we prep, why we're preppers. But he also wants me to explain why preppers should want Bitcoin, right? And we should want Bitcoin because we need a way to protect our money. When I had the Get Albi guys on, they were like, we'll see if we can find somebody that's into prepping. I'm like, I don't need somebody that's into fucking prepping. I need somebody that's into, understands your technology and is into money, because money is a survival topic. But producing for ourselves is a survival topic. I have a course on bioreactor compost, which if you want to be able to grow your own food, is the number one first place to start. That's why it was my first course. It's available for $40. There's a link in the show notes below. But if you're on the video and you're seeing a picture in front of you right now, you're looking at two different cuttings. They're from a plant called longevity spinach. The one on the left was put in my compost. The one on the right was stuck into very, very good potting soil. You see the difference? There's no fertilizer added. There's no special treatment. They were stuck into 2 cups and they were put 2 inches apart underneath some grow lights. And that is the results after being stuck as little bitty cuttings after 2 months. The difference, for those that can see the image, is dramatic. And it's not because the one on the right is crappy. It's because the one on the left is so much better, and I made it in my own backyard. And it's not nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. It's biology. And I show you exactly how to do it, and then you understand how to do it. You can learn more at homefoodsystems.com, and you can also take a free course there called Principle-Based Permaculture Design. It's totally free. It's about 4 hours of instruction, certificate, everything else. Check it out. And Jason Henza says he's earned $110,000 on Nostr. Please get on Nostr. Please get on Nostr. I'm not bragging, but I kind of earn about that much a month right now on Nostr, and I'm not even that active. And that's starting to add up to be a lot more than it was a year ago, right? Like, get on Nostr, man. You want to plug into networks. That's the place to be. And next up today, I want to let you guys know, as always, you can help support us by doing your online shopping at tspaz.com. There's a whole bunch of options there. But all my Amazon reviews are there. If I put it on Tspaz, I own it, I use it, I bought it, and I buy it again. You know you're buying with confidence. But if you're going to buy anything online today, tomorrow, next week, next month, if you just use my links, you can help support us no matter what you buy, even if it's not something I directly recommend. And I also just inked a deal about 3 weeks ago with Vivor. That's worked out really well. And they have some really cool stuff you can buy direct. There's a code that I have and a link that I have where you can save 5% on everything at Vivor. And then I make a little bit of money too. Today's item of the day are these collapsible storage bins. These things are awesome. You've probably seen other products like them. I want to say one thing real clear. The price that you'll see when you go to look at them is for 3, not 1. If it was for 1, they'd be expensive. For 3, they're very affordable. They do a lot of great things. They provide a lot of utility, but they are not best, in my opinion. Like, I always try to tell people what products are best for. Context. If you're going to put something on a shelf and store it long term, just use regular Rubbermaid tubs. They cost less. There's no advantage to the fact that they collapse. These are great for stuff that you move around. Camping gear, fishing gear. If you do swap meets, if you do things like farmers markets, if you're a producer. But what they're also really great for is when you go shopping and you check out and they give you like those crappy little plastic bags or those shitty cloth bags that you buy, like a robust box, or Costco. Is it just me, or when you go to Costco, do you feel like they act like their fucking garbage boxes are made out of gold? Sir, would you like boxes? How many? Enough to put all the shit I just paid you for in, right? You know, like these things, like you put them in your trunk or the back of your truck, whatever. They don't roll over. They don't drop your shit everywhere. They're great for stuff like that. But again, if you want to just store stuff in your shop, stick to Rubbermaid totes. Also consider becoming a member. My membership is not some bullshit membership so you can give me money. It's not a charity. It's not PBS. I don't send you a coffee mug with my picture on it or some shit that's worth $5 for a $50 donation. It's not a donation. Sometimes people call it a donation. Do not call anything. I do not take donations. I am not a charity case. I give all my education except for my stuff that's in courses for free. Bitcoin, permaculture, all of it, I give it for free. My membership, if you buy it and don't use it, that's your choice. But if you use it, it will put money in your pocket. If you are a listener of the show and you're not an MSB member and you buy things like seeds, tactical gear, cannabis products, herbs, herbal medicines, just about anything in our space, garden tools, etc. If you buy stuff like that and you listen to my show and you're not a member, you're hating money. You give me $50 and over a year you save $150. Come on. You want to start 9 server like we talked about today? 9% off. Get the fold card, stack it. That's 18% off. That'll pay for your membership for 3 freaking years right there. So consider becoming a member today. Support this show if you really want to always have content like this. That's how to do it. I make money a lot of ways, but I pay the bills, I pay the mortgage, and I buy the Bitcoin with MSB memberships. Take care, guys. I will catch you tomorrow with an interview show. And we've gone so long, I won't tell you about it. You have to tune in to see what it's about.